intersection of arts, environment, culture, health, peace, justice, science, and technology, paving the road for positive social change.
It's the Golden Road TV show. It's the Golden Road TV show.
So, hi, I'm Michael DiMartino, producer of Golden Road TV and Radio, and co-publisher of Golden Road Magazine. And we're here now out at Bitney Springs, and we're focusing on taking a water sample to get the actual science behind what's happening with Roundup in our county. Of course, Bitney Springs is free water that the county provides. They're not responsible for it, but nonetheless it's a water source that a lot of people use. And I have a strong suspicion that the potential for glyphosate, which is one of the nefarious ingredients of Roundup, might be here in the water. So today I'm going to do some water testing, and I'm working with David Howland, who's a water scientist in the University of California, Berkeley Water Testing, to find out exactly what's in our water. So as you can see, I'm going to lean down here. I'm going to get some water samples from Bitney Springs. And what we're going to do is we're going to find out in the next week what exactly is in the water. And even more importantly, we're going to let people know publicly what's happening. And as you can see, if you can go over there to the sign, that Bitney Springs water is from a natural source and is not treated or tested. Bitney Springs water is not a permitted public water source that is monitored or tested by the County of Nevada. Use of Bitney Springs water is at your own risk, and that's been put up fairly recently by the County of Nevada Environmental Health Department. So we'll be back in just about a week or so with our results. Make sure you check out December 9th Community Resilience Public Forum from 3 to 6 p.m. at the Nevada County Tech Center, 104 New Mohawk. And you can also always go to our YouTube channel, Golden Road TV and Radio, and watch these videos. I also want to thank Billy Bensing for being here today and helping out as a videographer. He'll be performing some of his highly spirited and enlightened music at our upcoming event in Mount Shasta on December 2nd.
Ready? She's flown up here all the way from Southern California to be here with us. She's actually forged change in her area and actually got a turnabout with her local water district. And I'll let Michael introduce her.
So again, we have a few minutes. We're going to have our one of our keynotes, again, solution-based, and about her victories of what she's been doing with non-toxic communities. Then we're going to have a little recess and come back and do our roundtable. Where do we go from here? Quick shout out to Practical Permaculture Institute, all the stuff you're hearing about permaculture and water catchment. Cathay Fish teaches about this all the time. A shout out to Sierra Streams, who is working to do restoration work on the watershed. We're trying to bring all of these players together, so there's no question that's unanswered. We have the resources and the knowledge here in our community. We're just trying to bring these pieces together. So on that, a nice round of applause. She was potentially going to have to cancel because of a family emergency, but she showed up. She got on a plane. She flew here this morning. She was picked up from Jessica Denning, and she's done a lot of effort to be here. And in her work, I want to introduce another mom superhero, another powerful woman in the movement from non-toxic communities, Kathleen Halal.
Hello, everyone. My name's Kathleen Halal. I'm a mother from Irvine, California, in Orange County. And I started to get interested in all of these kinds of issues when I was looking for a solution for my kids. They had autoimmune issues, and I wanted to look to diet as part of the solution. And I ended up meeting farmers from the Midwest, and they actually told me what they were doing. And I was horrified by the farming techniques. And because so many of the crops in the U.S. are GMO crops, and so many are either Roundup ready or they're sprayed with Roundup just before harvest to speed up the harvest, to make them ready for selling so that they can plant another crop sooner. It's like what Sue was talking about, that they're trying to speed up the harvesting process and get more crops planted. I learned about that, and I really started looking into Roundup and what it does. And we changed our diet in our home. We went to organic foods, and I started telling everyone about what I was learning. I was already very active in my community. I am not a natural activist. I'm an art historian. I like museums and teaching, and my background is in that. I went to USC, studied to be a curator. So this is way off the path for me, but I just kind of fell into it. And once you start looking into this and you start learning about it, you become motivated because it's so striking what's going on and how much people don't know about these things. So I started talking to all my friends. I was on the board at the Performing Arts Center in Orange County, and I was PTA board member for all the districts, like the city board for the PTA. And I was running the arts department with my friend and trying to get more arts programs into the schools. And then when my term ran out, there was a space for the position of health and safety advisor, chair of health and safety. And so everyone kind of pointed to me and said, well, Kathleen, you've been talking about all these things, so why don't you do that? And that was kind of the beginning. And I started bringing in speakers and bringing in scientific documentation about Roundup, about glyphosate. We actually had Dr. Pero, the author you were talking about, brilliant pediatrician. What's Making Our Children Sick is her new book that she's done together with Vincent Adams, who's a doctor at University of San Francisco. And she came, I had the farmer come, Howard Vlieger come, and I brought more documentation and more letters from various retired governmental scientists. Every month we would meet, I would have more information for all the PTA presidents and the board. And at the end of my tenure, I asked if we could have a vote and ask to have toxic pesticides banned from our district. Not actually banned, that's not actually the word, but we asked the school board to stop applying toxic pesticides near our children. And all the presidents agreed. We all voted on it, they agreed. So I went forward to the school board and I asked them, and they already knew me because I was also on the parents fundraising board for the district, Irvine Public Schools Foundation. And we raised money for, I had a project raising money for additional school nurses and music, and my husband and I were very big supporters of the district. We made a lot of donations, and it's a lovely district that we're fortunate enough to be a part of. It's very close-knit, it's very education-centered, it's very international, and for public schools, I think they have a pretty good formula going down there. And the really important thing about Irvine is that the city is very closely connected to the schools. The school district and the city managers and the city council work very closely together to create this community in Irvine that's very tight. And our schools are connected to the city parks, and they share kind of the same terrain. So once I had approached the school district, and they finally very kindly agreed to figure out a non-toxic policy for our city, or for our school district, I then got together with some other parents from Irvine, and we went to the city council and we said, well, the school district is doing this. We think you should do it too, because the parks are connected to the schools. So that's kind of how we got the school district and the city council. But I have to say that there's a special mentality in our community that the schools and the city are so closely intertwined. That's kind of how that happened. We have leaders who are very conscientious, and when we first approached them, they kind of had very little idea of what I was talking about or about what we were talking about. So there was a lot of education involved. All of the scientist letters and all of the information that I was giving to the PTA presidents, I copied the superintendent so that he knew everything that was going on. I was talking to him about everything. Everyone was very well informed. The school nurses, I kept them informed, and they knew about a lot of this information. So when we started our group, my hope was that if we succeeded, that I could help, or that we could help other groups across the nation do the same thing. And that's my hope. My hope is that some of you here will be inspired to form your own groups and your own communities and get this going where you live. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we did it kind of in the specifics. But if you want more information, you can go to our website, which is Non-Toxic Communities. We have a Facebook page, and we also have a website. And our friend Jessica has very kindly arranged for us to have a grant. So we're going to be upgrading our website, which is very exciting. And we will put all of the educational materials and all kinds of things there that you might need to bring about positive change in your neighborhoods too. So our slogan, my husband came up with this, was, "Let's make Irvine truly the safest for the smallest among us." And that was very important because our city's slogan was America's safest city. So we took that, my husband took that, and he said, well, let's make sure it's the safest city all the way around. And the city leaders agreed with us. So luckily that was a good slogan. But if you can tune into the ideals of your own community or your own town, I think that will help you to work in tandem with leaders. So to start out, I would say get a group together. Get a group together. I have friends who are doing this all by themselves in their towns, and that's wonderful, but it's a lot harder. What we did was we formed a group. Even I had a group when I was kind of alone. My group was the PTA, right? So get involved with clubs that are already formed, or groups that are already formed who might be interested in these things. The PTA, of course, is interested in children's safety. Some PTAs are more receptive than others, but once I had the speakers come in, they were so reputable and so well educated that the presidents realized that this was really an important issue and truly something that should be a concern. So find a group, get a team together. Our team in Irvine, when we went to approach the city, we had a really special group of people. We had myself, I had the experience with different groups we could approach. In the end, I got the grant from Beyond Pesticides. I knew we could bring them in. I knew they could offer the training, so I kind of had the answers from that point of view. I had the science and the contacts for that. We had one gal who did a lot of marketing. She was very serious. She'd come from a career in the business world, so she was in charge of sort of branding and marketing. We had another gal who had done public relations for the Irvine Company, so she was used to connecting with journalists and getting press. So let's see, and the gentleman we brought on board had experience with City Hall and city management, so he knew how to set up meetings and who to contact. So if you can find a group where everyone has a skill that they might be able to contribute, it would be really helpful for you. The stronger the team, the better. And then find supportive community leaders. Feel them out. You might have one person on your city council who is going through, maybe they had cancer, or someone else in their family has cancer or autism. So many of us sadly know people who are going through certain kinds of health crises, and almost everyone knows even a kid down the street who has an issue. So kind of feel out your city council members. If you have anyone who's sympathetic, that really helps you to kind of get a foot in the door. Take pictures and gather documentation. When you see people spraying around the town, spraying Roundup or doing whatever they're doing, I had pictures of kids in the front of school when school would let out. They post those little yellow warning signs when they spray. They need to do that by law if they're going to spray something that's toxic. So they'd put the signs, and then the pictures I had were of the kids sitting in the planter right by the sign, digging in the dirt with their hands. And all the parents are standing around chatting, and I would see this all the time. So I said, you know what, I have to take a picture of that because no one's noticing, right? And then those kids, what are they going to do? They're going to get in the car, and they're going to have a snack, and no one's going to wash their hands. So I thought this is really like something we need to note. But also, you know, the guys spraying around the neighborhood and so on, just sort of raising awareness and kind of documenting what's going on. And we contacted our school district and we contacted our city. By law, they need to provide you with what products they're applying, the quantities, and I believe we found out when they were applying them. And when you get these documents back, it's pretty eye-opening because they're really using a lot of product. And it's like, oh my gosh, holy smokes. So it sort of motivates you a little more, but it's very good to have that documentation to know what their standard use is. I had a relationship with the maintenance guys. I met with them for over 2 years about these issues before the change came in Irvine. I like to think that it's not going to take other groups that long because I think that there's now a trend and there's awareness, there's more awareness, especially since the school groundskeeper won the lawsuit against Monsanto. I think we tend to pay attention to numbers, and it was all over Bloomberg and Yahoo and kind of made the mainstream press. So I think that there is a lot more awareness, but I actually had a good relationship with our maintenance guys who I'm sure in the beginning thought I was nuts. I brought in a crop expert one day to meet with them and tell them about how it's truly dangerous, you know, what you're working with. And I brought in all kinds of people. And then I'd bring them like organic cookies and cakes, and I'd say it's organic, you know, and I just, you know, I actually loved the guys, even though they were kind of resisting me. We had a good relationship. We had really good people working in the department, and after a while, I think they finally started to listen a little more to me, but it took time, and you have to be patient. Let's see, gather documentation, branding. If you go through non-toxic communities, you wouldn't have to worry about that because we have a logo and we have branding and we have materials. We will give you everything, but we would support you if you wanted to come up with your own branding or your own logo. You know, if you wanted to change it or do your own thing, you know, you can pick and choose what you want from our organization. And there are other good organizations out there doing this. There's my old group, Non-Toxic Irvine, they continue to be based in Irvine, and I'm working with non-toxic communities more on a national scale. But there's Moms Cross America, who you can contact. So there are different groups sprouting up for guidance, but my group is Non-Toxic Communities. Make a formal request on a petition. We circulated a change.org petition around our town, and parents forwarded it. One parent would sign it, and they'd tell their friends about it, and more would sign it. And every time we got a signature on our petition asking for a non-toxic policy in Irvine, the messages were sent directly to our city council members, so that with each signature, they were pinged. So by the time we wanted to meet with them, I think we had around 700 signatures. And so they knew who we were, they knew what we were about, and then we went into meetings with them. We had meetings outside of the city council meeting. We had personal meetings where we came in with our binders. We had binders, like really thick binders full of all the science. And there's more science, sadly, coming out every week or every month. I get more information in my inbox. I mean, and these are studies from like Harvard, NYU, I mean, very reputable universities. And the more professors are studying what tiny amounts of these chemicals can do to our kids and to their grandkids and great-grandkids, the more concerning it gets to be. And in the end, all the science that these epidemiologists or endocrinologists are coming out with is way ahead of where our governmental agencies are. So the latest science says we should be alarmed and we should stop using these products around our kids. So bring binders, bring science. We also brought scientists with us to the meetings with the city council members so that if they had questions, they could be immediately answered. We had 2 UCI professors who helped us, but if you can find local scientists or professors that will go with you to the meeting, it's really handy to have all questions answered right on the spot. Create a social media presence, Facebook page, Twitter, Nextdoor. I don't know if you use Nextdoor up here, but Nextdoor is a great way to spread the word and try and get other people to join in with you, show their support. Instagram, if you want to look for youth, Instagram, Snapchat. If you have someone who can handle that kind of social media, it's really helpful to get the word out and grow your group. Develop a relationship with journalists. In our particular case, we had 1 or 2 journalists who were consistently there to support us. So they went to the city council meeting, or they went to tour the school campuses. When we spoke with principals, we would get press about this, that we were doing this, and this, you know, why we were doing it, and our story. And that helps also to get the word out and to get city councilors to listen to you, council members. Once you have the critical mass, then you can go in, like I said, for the smaller meetings. But then after that, you would want to get your group to go to a city council meeting so that they can see how many people are supporting what you're asking for. When we went, we had a really big crowd. We had, of course, all of us. We brought our kids. Our kids spoke to the mayor and the city council. One of the mothers in our group, her child was fighting cancer, so she had a lot of kids come in who had either recovered from cancer or were still going through treatment, and parents as well. So it sort of raised awareness for our city council, and we actually did research. This mother did, and she found out there was kind of a cluster in our town. There was a higher than normal rate. One of my sons lost one of his baseball teammates to cancer at 12. So these kinds of stories and this kind of awareness makes people think twice about whether they should listen to you or not. Always dress professionally. Always make a very clean presentation, as if you were going in for a bank loan. You know, they're dressed in their business clothes, so you should be dressed in your professional clothing as well. Like I said, take binders. We had binders, so take binders with scientific studies. We have a lot of information available on our website, but you can also go to Beyond Pesticides, or also PANA in California. A lot of you are probably familiar with those organizations. They will give you a lot of the scientific studies, and you can just put them in a binder and categorize them, and it just helps to have science behind you. And we use a little bit of leverage too. We brought up to the city, well, the schools are already doing it. So then the city was like, oh, well, if they're going to do it, because nobody wants to be first to try it. People are very afraid that it will fail. They're afraid it's too expensive. They've been told a lot of things by people who are sort of pro-pesticide. And it helps to tell them someone else has done it before, someone else is doing it, and somebody near you has already made the decision. So what are you going to do? You know, it kind of helps to make them feel like they're not the only ones. And when I went to the schools for the PTA, I said Harvard is doing it. They've been doing it for years, organic landscaping. I talked to them about all the schools in the state of Connecticut, K through 8. They have no toxins on their fields where the kids play. State of New York, K through 12. For years, California is so far behind on this. And it was really eye-opening for them to learn that, but also to hear that other leaders in other schools had made this decision and it wasn't a mistake, that it could be successful and the grounds would still look very nice. They're very worried about that, you know, and you have to be sympathetic to that. Everybody wants it to look nice. Am I doing okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you
okay.
ready to field some questions, or do you have...
I have a couple more things to
Okay,
say,
great.
and then yes. Okay, so so provide the solutions, provide training. You can't go in and just complain and say, we don't like you applying these things, please stop. Because they'll throw up their hands and they'll say, well, what do we do? And they don't know, because all the maintenance guys have been trained by the chemical dealers. And so they think, and they've been told that that's the only way to do it, it's the cheapest way to do it, and they'll fail if they try organic. And you have to kind of get past those myths and tell them that it's not true. In Irvine, we have been organic for 2 years and everything looks great. In fact, our fields have improved. I wish I could show you pictures, but we used to have very hard sort of dirt patches, you know, interspersed with the grass. None of that now. The soil is soft. Some of the people, maybe Sue, or I can't remember who was talking about the soil being alive. Our soil is now spongy. It's not hard when the kids fall or run. They can get a better grip. My kids love it. They love it, and it looks better. Yeah, it's amazing. So we have saved on it cost, initially the first year, there was a bump in cost of about only 5%. But that was because they were kind of trying new things, and they might not have had to do all that, but they were, and so it bumped up about 5%. But they saved so much on water because the soil is now holding the water. They saved so much on water, they ended up not paying any more. It did not cost any more to switch the system. And now that it's going and the ground is healthy and the soil biology is going, it's pushing out the weeds by itself. Now they're starting to have a decrease in costs. And this has been proven before. Beyond Pesticides did a 5-year study with a high school in Massachusetts, and their costs went down, just like is happening in Irvine. So it's actually money saving. So it's a big deal. So, and we have homeowners associations now on board. So we have homeowners associations, and the whole city is now gone non-toxic. In fact, UCI was sort of a holdout, but the other day I was driving through campus and there was a guy with a backpack, and on the back, instead of it saying Roundup, it said organic. Wow. I took a picture of that because that was on UCI's campus, and the UC schools, you know, they were the kind of the last to decide to do it. But it makes you feel so good. I can't tell you as a parent how good it makes me feel and how lucky I feel when my kid is out there in the baseball field and I don't have to wonder about what they sprayed this morning or yesterday or a week ago. And you know, conversely, when our team plays in other cities, I sit there and I kind of think about it. I'm like, gosh, I wish they were organic too. But it's happening. It's spreading. We have neighboring towns going and doing it. And I hope some of you will be inspired to become leaders. And please come to Non-Toxic Communities. We will be in touch with you. We will give you the tools. We will talk to you. And I encourage you all to go back to your towns and communities and do the same thing. So that's all. That's kind of a sticking point. When you talk about this, you can't touch that. You can't touch agriculture, but in the city will not try to regulate agriculture. That's its own independent thing, and the farmers will make a fuss if you try to tell them what to do. So that's kind of off the table. You don't do that. However, the awareness in our town of Irvine of organics being more desirable and so on is causing the farmers who are raising strawberries and other produce to raise more organic, and they have farm stands around town and it says organic. It's proudly displayed. So it's sort of all awareness. It sort of connects. But I will say the one thing is when we were doing this, I did not discuss GMOs at all. Stay focused. Your focus is children and the community's pesticide exposure. That's it. They can know that you eat organic, but don't cross over into the GMO subject. Stay focused. This is about exposure in our community.
That's kind of what ARC is talking about, is becoming this platform to be able to bring us together and attack these issues one at a time in a manner that's actually orchestrated and focused. Because if we keep running around dealing with every individual issue, we're just kind of spinning our wheels at a very slow pace. Now, I'm curious, we have 3 agencies up here spraying, PG&E, Caltrans, and NID. How many agencies did you have in your local area that you confronted with this?
That's a really good question, because we didn't work on that level at all. That would be, I imagine, a state level. And I am working on those things now. I've kept working and I am trying to get some traction at the state level, but I think that that's a different battle. We only dealt with the school district and the city council. So anything the city council controlled and anything the school district controlled. Caltrans and those other outfits would be outside of that realm. I'm not saying don't go for it, but it's a separate project.
Right, and it's one victory at a time. And I think the NID victory is something that we locally can overcome and kind of build some much needed confidence in our people. Right now, people don't feel confident that they can, and they feel worn down. And again, if we can have a win on one small issue, as Dr. Luther King said, pick a small issue that you know you can win.
Yes.
And build the confidence in the followers, and then move on to the next issue one step at a time. And so together we can do this. Are there any other questions while we're standing here from anybody?
No.
Okay, if not, then let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a golden road TV show. Yes, it's a golden road TV show. It's a Golden Road TV show.com.
Hi, I'm Lonneke Olieroek. I'm the COO of the Ocean Cleanup. It's the Ocean Cleanup's mission to develop advanced technologies to rid the world's oceans of plastic. We want to reduce the concentration of floating plastic in the oceans with 90% by 2040. System 1 is a floating tube, a flotation device with a skirt attached beneath it. The skirt is underwater for about 3 meters. That system will move around the ocean in a C shape or a U shape, catching up on the plastic, collecting it inside of it. We care so much about the marine life and how much harm the plastic is doing to it. So in designing the system, we've taken great care not to have any adverse effect on the wildlife that's out there. Our system is not propelled at all, apart from the natural forces of the ocean. It is propelled by the forces of nature. It is designed to be a passive cleaning up system.
My name is Laurent Le Breton. I'm the lead oceanographer for the Ocean Cleanup, and basically we study plastic pollution in the ocean, so it means understanding the sources, the transport and the fate of plastic in the ocean. I think we're seeing that microplastic pollution in particular is increasing substantially over the last few years, and I think it's very important to understand that we need to stop putting plastic in the ocean. So plastic are being released in the ocean and they basically move with currents, with wind and wave, and it accumulates in the subtropical waters in the North Pacific particularly, in what we call the subtropical gyres. And those are areas where basically the currents are converging and marine debris accumulate. It does migrate, but it stays relatively in the same area, but it moves. There is 5 accumulation zones in the same type, so 1 in each oceanic basin. We believe the one in the North Pacific is the largest. Well, I think they can start by reducing the use of plastic, particularly single-use plastic. I think is one big topic, and also I think that cleanup matters. You know, anytime you go to the beach, to rivers, forests, in natural environments, if you find trash, it's always good to just pick it up and put it in the bin, right?
Our System 1 is a beta type version. It's the minimum viable product, and it actually works. So it is the intent to start cleaning up, but we want to learn from it for this first year of operation and collect a lot of valuable information. In order to be able to clean up 50% in 5 years, we need multiple cleanup systems. So we are now launching our first system, the System 1, which will prove the concept and will give us enough information so that we can implement it in a redesign in the next generation of cleanup system, which should be even bigger and better and more productive. We intend to scale up, and we need a fleet of about 60 of those types of systems. We're in a bit of a hurry because we do see the risk of the plastic that's currently out there breaking down into smaller pieces, which will cause even more harm. So we really want to get as much out, now that it's still big, as soon as we can. So we do have some ambitious plans to scale up fast. We believe that we will have the fleet of 60 systems in operation by 2021.
So, of course, next few months are going to be super tense. This is an exciting moment, but of course the moment we're looking most forward to is to bring this first plastic back to shore. It's, because that means that it's proven technology, and that's what we hope to achieve with this first system. So the idea is that we take the plastic back to land, and we work together with our recycling partners, and the idea is that we can process that plastic and turn it into very nice, desirable products that are durable, designed to not end up back into the oceans. And by selling those, we actually hope to help fund the cleanup and fund the operation of the cleanup system. So next few months, I'll be really obsessively looking at the data that's coming in from the vessel, from the data streams, from the cleanup system, which will hopefully then allow us to catch the first plastic and bring it to land.
$1.8 trillion pieces of plastic float at the surface of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Here, the ocean cleanup is deploying the world's first technological solution to this growing problem. The principle behind it is simple. Create a coastline where there are none, concentrate the plastic, and take it out. The system consists of a 600-meter-long floater and a 3-meter deep skirt attached below. The floater provides buoyancy to the system and prevents plastic from flowing over it, while the skirt prevents smaller particles from escaping underneath. As the impenetrable skirt creates a downward flow, marine life can safely pass beneath it. Here is how the system catches plastic. The system takes advantage of 3 natural oceanic forces: winds, waves, and currents. Both the plastic and system are being carried by the current. However, wind and waves propel the system only, as the floater partly sticks above the surface, while plastic is primarily just beneath it. The system thus moves faster than the plastic, allowing the plastic to be captured. The skirt extends deeper in the middle of the system than on the outer edges. As the current applies pressure on the skirt, the system naturally adopts a U shape, which enables it to concentrate plastic in its center, like a funnel. The drag generated by the skirt also acts as a stabilizing force, allowing the system to reorient itself when the wind changes direction. And because the system, like the plastic, is free-floating, it automatically drifts to the areas with the highest plastic concentration. Fitted with solar-powered lights, anti-collision systems, cameras, sensors, and satellite antennas, the system actively communicates its position at all times and continuously gathers performance data. Periodically, a support vessel comes by to take out the concentrated plastic, like a garbage truck of the ocean. The plastic is then transported to land, recycled, and made into durable products. This is the first of a fleet of 60 systems. Once deployed, the fleet is expected to clean up 50% of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch every 5 years.
alternative fuels, and then we're going to get really into the thick of the conversation and the keynotes regarding food and water safety. But on that note, I want to introduce our first keynote speaker. He does a lot to protect us, Nathan Menth.
Good morning. First of all, ARC, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Michael, thank you. Rick, appreciate your help. So today, the resilience that was mentioned, we need to focus on the emergency preparedness, and it is very easy to look at a fire engine and say, what can they do, and what do they do? And absolutely, we strive to assist the public with that. However, for emergency preparedness, it actually starts as the civilian, the homeowners, myself off duty. So I've got a couple of things that I want to cover today. The emergency preparedness factor in relation to wildland fire. When we talk about threats to the community, one of our target hazard areas is the community as a whole in relation to wildfire. We have a very dense population that's mixed with wildland-urban interface. And what that is if you picture the coastal with the ocean right up against the coastline, that's the boundary set. In the intermix, in the interface, there is no boundary that's set. We're plugged throughout the community with parcels, property, beautiful properties. And to do our part as fire suppression personnel, educating the public is actually a huge factor to that. Public education with wildfire prevention is such a broad scale. I'll try to narrow it down here to 5 minutes, but I want to focus on two aspects. There's a direct approach that the public can take, and then there's the indirect approach. First, I'm going to talk about the direct approach. The direct approach is indeed the hands-on. It is the opportunity to do what you can do manually to clear your yard, clear your roof, clear your property, leaves, gutters, pine needles, anything that can harness that ember or spark in the event and the inevitable event of a wildfire. Although a majority of wildfires in California are caused by humans, whether it's accidental, intentional, there are still aspects of wildfires that are caused by Mother Nature, lightning, etc. So the direct approach is eliminating the fuels or reducing the fuels. When we talk about that, we mentioned defensible space. I'm sure that's no secret word to anybody in here. Defensible space is the section around property that's viable to clear in an appropriate manner. 100 feet with 30-foot clearance around your house. You can have the green vegetation, the planted vegetation. You can even enjoy the natural vegetation. But without the fire's natural ability to come through and consume at a slow rate as it used to prior to the population being here, we have to take into consideration life and property. My co-partner, Chris Mertens, did just arrive here. If I could, I'm going to allow him to come on in and join me. He is also he's an employee with CAL FIRE. Come on up, Chris. When we're talking about life and property, that is what your fire departments, your fire districts, and fire suppression personnel, we care about. The environment is in there as well. However, with life and property, that directly affects the ability for the community to function, and we see an importance of that. So when it comes into the direct approach with the fuels reduction, the labor of clearing your property, we definitely support that, and we would strive for that. Talking about some defensible space currently at the moment, and then I was going to move on to an indirect. So we talked about direct, now I'm going to talk about some indirect. Indirect is the mental preparedness, that mental state of readiness. We all hope for the best, but let's prepare for the worst. We've heard many stories come out of California in the past 10 years of significant fires, fire behavior growing, and the preparatory, I guess, mannerisms that we can take to avoid that or be mentally prepared for it. There are multiple organizations that Nevada County Consolidated, we have our website up at www.nccfire.com. www.nccfire.com that allow you to have some basic components of questions and answers. Ready.gov is an excellent website. And all of this indirect preparatory states you guys can take, it relates right to your level of preparedness, evacuation sheets, evacuation routes, truly knowing your community and how to get out of your community more than the one way that we always do. Take the back roads every once in a while, learn those routes. Understand that the topographical features in your neighborhood may directly impact you and your family or community in certain areas. We have significant drainages, Dog Bar, Brewer Drainage. We have the Champion Mine on the west side, even going up Highway 20 with the Deer Creek. These are significant drainages that lead directly into beautiful communities in our area. Having the opportunity to mentally prepare for that, identify these checklists, understand, are you prepared, ready.gov, having that supply of your credentials ready to go, flashlights, communications, secondary plans for communications. In the fire service, we always relate to a face-to-face communication as the best form of communication. And it is, because there's no intent or no reliance on supplemental material and or interpretation. So we rely on you guys to have a system in place to talk to your families, to check in with loved ones, and to acknowledge or to relay to them that you have been successful in the event of an evacuation. Like I said, we could spend hours and hours upon talking about this. And one last thing I do want to talk about is what we have done to assist you to prepare. Now, I've mentioned the websites and I've mentioned the list and the evacuation list. However, as the population grows, typically the fire department personnel running up and down the streets in the middle of the night with their sirens on isn't as effective as it used to be due to that urban sprawl, like I talked about, that wildland-urban interface. So one thing that Nevada County OES and partners with the Sheriff's Department, surrounding agencies, have done is go to a Code Red notification system. And for those of you who don't know what a Code Red notification system is, it is a streamlined way to get mass media out on internet, email, cell phones, telephone calls, voicemails, landlines, alerting you of evacuations. It's not only emergencies with significant incidents, but it's a possibility of a water boil situation. So it's actually a widespread, and I encourage all of the listeners and visitors here today, if you're not signed up for Code Red, please look into it. Please sign up. It is an excellent opportunity to take to get notified. You can access that through Nevada County's website, and you can just Google search Nevada County Code Red and it'll bring you right up. It's a very informative website.
Nathan, is that the one where they do the star 211 to get into the directory?
Star 211 is the Nevada County's and disaster response in the loop, and that is another form. Code Red is going to be a supplemental item that is driven through the Nevada County Office of OES. So I appreciate your time. Chris, I am going to allow Chris to have the floor here for a little bit and go over a couple things. As Nevada County Consolidated, we do strive in community protection. Our doors at our fire stations around the community, along with many other jurisdictions that we operate with, very close-knit. Please feel free to stop in, ask questions, get the answers to those questions. This is a situation where, in the event of a wildfire or a natural disaster or even just a large snowstorm during the winter, if you need help and 911 is dialed, you will get the resources that you need, and we are part of that. So if you have questions that we can assist with, please stop by. You don't have to call 911 to ask questions, but swing into a fire station, swing into a police station, CAL FIRE stations, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to have Chris talk for a little bit, and then we'll field some questions, and thank you for your time.
So good morning, Officer Chris Mertens, CAL FIRE Law Enforcement. So just a little bit of background, you're probably wondering, CAL FIRE has a fire suppression division and a law enforcement division. So my job is to basically enforce forest and fire laws, which is why we're all here, the big dilemma in the state right now. My jurisdiction is Nevada, Yuba, and Placer counties, so we pretty much go to any fires, we investigate, we assist with public education events like this, and then we also go to citation, enforcement, arrest on the law enforcement side. So our partners in Nevada County, whether it be Consolidated or a city mutual department, we work hand in hand with 24/7. with prevention and education. And that's why we're all here today. One of the biggest things that I'm part of is I'm in charge of all of our defensible space inspectors for Nevada County, Yuba, and Placer County. They work in our shop in the Prevention Bureau. Our primary mission is for them to go out, and I don't know if anyone here has had one of our inspectors come out yet, but they basically do a defensible space inspection on your home, which is all preventative for you, the homeowners, and the community. It's free of charge. There's no charge to it. You can call any CAL FIRE station. CAL FIRE engine crews are also trained to come out and do an inspection. Everything is digital now, so they have a tablet. They come out, they spend no more than probably about 15 to 30 minutes at your house. They give a walk around, they talk to you, they give you education material. And like I said, it's free of charge. They'll be more than happy to come out any time of the year, whether it's raining or whether it's right now. Our enforcement period, what we aim for is obviously the springtime, when the fire danger is at its lowest, when we're telling people, please hit that 30-foot zone around your house, hit that 100-foot zone around your house. And our biggest messages, you can write it down, it's www. And I think there's a pamphlet which readyforwildfire.org. And we have a pamphlet in the back of the room that you can look at before you leave, which has all the information. You can put it on the website. And that basically outlines all of the prevention education programs that CAL FIRE offers, and that we work with all of our local community members. We work really tight with Nevada County OES, Placer County OES, working with them to also have their inspectors go out and do the same thing. We work with any government, whether it be Nevada Irrigation District or all the way down to the nonprofit local community group that wants help. So any event, and I don't want to step on anything Nathan's already said, but we pretty much all are working to do the same thing. Our mission is to protect the community, and we work for the community. And after this meeting, if you guys have any questions, feel free to come up to me. I can give you my name, information, business card, whatever you would like, and we can have further conversations.
Thank you, guys. We know how important your work is here. Everybody recognizes that. There's no question about it, but I think it's important that we say it and acknowledge it. So thanks.
Yeah, and as the coordinator, thank you.
So in the event.
So again, as Payom said, we want to thank you for your service. A couple years ago, I live up on the top of Red Dog Road. We had the Lowell Hill fire, and I got to know some of the local firefighters who, for 3 days, stood at the line of my property and defended my house and my property from the Lowell Hill fire. And it was an amazing time of bonding. We'd bring up coffee and food, and these guys really put their life on the line for our community. So once again, thank you so much for all that you do. And hello and welcome to the Source Directory, a completely new and innovative approach to create a list of individuals, organizations, projects, and events that are helping to make our area more resilient and a healthier, happier place to live. Within the directory, you'll find hundreds of different businesses and people who are all committed and dedicated to community building, environmental restoration, self-sustainability, and economic development. Some of the categories you'll find them under is arts and culture, health and healing, peace and justice, food and farm, science and technology. I'm one of the founders, Michael DiMartino, and I'm also the host and producer of Golden Road TV and Radio, which produces a weekly 2-hour TV and radio show, once again, to bring focus to those people in our region that are helping to make a change for the better and to make this area much happier and healthier with a higher quality of living for all of us. Thank you for your time. If you'd like more information, just check out thesourcedirectory.org and goldenroadtelevision.com. Thank you for your time.
It's a Golden Road TV show. It's a Golden Road TV show. Well, listen once, listen twice. Oh, won't you please take my advice? It's the Golden Road TV Show.com.
Let's just think about this for a second. Over half of American kids are sick with a chronic condition, and you heard me out there defining on the steps what a chronic condition was, right? It's a situation where you've had a health issue for more than 3 months and that there's no cure. That's what a chronic health condition is. We spend the least on food, the most on health care, give the highest number of vaccines, and have the sickest kids of any industrialized country. So I'm saying, what are we doing? If every pediatrician is not here knocking on these legislators' doors, then I don't know what's going on. Well, I can tell you where they are. They're in their practices seeing kids 1 every 10 minutes, 1 every 15 minutes, and I'm going to tell you, in defense of the pediatricians, I'm one, that you really can't get into this stuff when you're seeing kids every 10 to 15 minutes. It's impossible, and that's what your schedule looks like. 1 every 15 minutes, that's what we're doing. Are you going to get into all this? Wow. It's really hard. So that's why it's really up to make some of these changes. After the end of these talks, you're going to know more than your pediatrician. So what happened to me? And I want to share what happened to me because it can happen to you. And I think I'm really preaching to the choir, to this group, but maybe to not to some of our legislators. When I read Jeffrey's book, I never heard of this guy. But Jeffrey, on page 16, started talking about Dr. Arpad Pusztai. And so I had to read about Arpad Pusztai. He's Hungarian. I'm married to a Hungarian. My mother-in-law was so happy when I started talking about him. And so what I learned from Arpad is that, well, wait a second. This guy was studying genetically modified potatoes in 1996, almost 22 years ago. And he was the first one to look at this problem of genetically modified food. So why am I talking about GM food? We're talking about glyphosate. Is because they're linked. Herbicide-tolerant crops were developed so we can spray more Roundup or more glyphosate. And what Arpad found, and I'm going to show this histopathology slide, you're not medical professionals, you're not med students, but you're not a bunch of dummies. We're going to elevate this conversation. This is what he saw. And when I saw these slides, I went, you've got to be kidding me. Why didn't anybody tell me this? Jeffrey Smith told me, and this is what I saw. When Arpad fed these rats genetically modified potatoes, and then he looked at the GM-fed rats and the non-GM-fed rats, he saw that the intestinal wall villi were abnormal. Now I'm saying, wait a minute, those are the little finger-like projections lining your gut, and that's where the absorption of all your nutrients happens. So you mean to tell me we have disruption of the gut of those rats that ate the GM potatoes? Is that what's causing leaky gut? The one that I'm telling you that I'm seeing in just about every one of your kids, and mine too. What he also found was in the stomach lining of those rats that they had increased cell growth. That's called hyperplasia. Well, why is that important? Hyperplasia is the precursor to dysplasia. Did you all hear my New York accent? Yeah, right. Hyperplasia. I'll spare you. I won't go to. Maybe I should go to New York on you. I don't know. Can I talk like I'm from New York? So look what he found. There's all this hyperplasia, precursor to dysplasia, precursor to cancer. And was this the cancerous precursor that we were seeing from the genetic modified process? Possibly. That's what he found. So let me switch gears a little bit. So if you have an herbicide-tolerant plant that's genetically modified, then you're spraying a lot of glyphosate on it. They're linked. Which one's causing what? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm really not sure. If you said, is it the GM process? Is it the glyphosate? It's likely both. And Sarah Leaney actually took a look at that. So what I try to do is say, why is this stuff not so good? No way, no. Why do I say that? Glyphosate, it's a chelator. You heard Howard talk about that. It binds micronutrients, and it's likely doing it in our kids. So how do I know that glyphosate is binding minerals in our kids? I don't know. All I know is they're eating it. I check their nutrient levels, and they're low. I fix their diets, and it goes up. Come on, people, this is not hard, right? This is like common sense. You know, you could all be clinicians and practitioners here. So and I gave you a study here, just so you know, because everybody wants data. I'm giving you data. Clinical correlation, nutrient deficiencies in kids, magnesium, zinc, are associated with learning disorders, ADHD, insomnia, mood disturbances, etc. Glyphosate is a carcinogen. You heard that. You heard the World Health Organization, through the IARC. They did the studies in animals. It's really hard to study humans. And they found that it's a carcinogen class 2A. It would be a class 1 if it was studied in humans. And actually, when Monsanto first brought this stuff to the EPA back in 1983, they found renal cell tubular adenomas in kidneys in rats fed glyphosate, by the way. So Monsanto's known this a long time, that there's carcinogenic potential. And they looked at those slides, and then they found another group of pathologists to look at the slides, and then the data kind of morphed. I think you're kind of getting a theme here on how data can change. Depends on who's looking at it. Glyphosate is an antibiotic. I mean, if Howard's stuff isn't convincing enough, what the cutting edge of research now is the effect of glyphosate on the microbiome and how that changes. Now, how do I know? Because I check kids' microbiome. I do something called PCR testing. I can order a test. It's not in regular conventional medicine. It's in one of the tools of integrative doctors or functional medicine doctors. We can do a test through Genova. I'm not plugging Genova, but that's where I order it. It's $134 if you have a PPO insurance. I can map out the entire microbiome of a kid and look at it. And what I find is disturbing. They have very few amounts of microbiome. Their levels are low, and they have an abnormal distribution of the microbiome. And depending on what issue they have, you'll find abnormalities such as kids on the spectrum will have high levels of certain Clostridial species, or you'll see lots of strep species in kids who have pandas, or other opportunistic players. Remember, most of that bacteria are in your gut or are going to take over if they get a chance. They're not little happy bacteria here to help you. They're going to go over. And so when those lactobacilli and bifidobacteria are abnormal because they're killed off, like in Monica's study, all the bad players party. And that's what happens. And you see it. And when you make corrections, kids get better. How do I know? Well, for one, they're better. I asked the mom, how's Johnny? He's better. How's his stomach ache? Gone. Is he pooping? Yes, the constipation resolved. I'm going to retire on constipation. I treat constipation all day long. They're all constipated, digestive enzymes better, because we're checking the stool. We're doing analyses. Why do I do those analyses? Mom's report could be enough, by the way, but dads want data. You have to show those dads that data. They want to see it. Men want to see science. So, gosh darn it, I'm going to show them science. So, it's an antibiotic. Another good study about, this one is just off the press, and it shows an explanation for antibiotic resistance.
I have a question. Is it okay to ask a question right now?
Can we do afterwards?
Oh, afterwards.
Can you save it? Will you remember it?
I'll remember it.
Try to remember. Thank you. Let me move on. It inhibits a pathway in plants, the shikimate pathway. There's a pathway responsible for producing certain neurochemicals, and it blocks the production of a certain group of amino acids called aromatic amino acids. And we were told that glyphosate wasn't harmful to humans because we don't have the shikimate pathway. And we don't. Humans don't have it, but our microbiome does. And that's key. It's another thing. So, you know, what happens is the aromatics get blocked. Those aromatic amino acids, building blocks of protein, kids can't make neurotransmitters. Is that what's happening? I'm guessing. I don't know. Why don't I know? Because there are no studies. And glyphosate use is discriminatory. This is the last point I want to make. California's poorest counties have the highest application of glyphosate. And they are Tulare, Fresno, Merced, Del Norte, Madera, Lake, Imperial, Kern, and they're all part of the southern part of the Central Valley. And populations in these areas are mostly Latino. So our Latino kids are getting the most spraying involved. And this has been shown to be seen in Salinas Valley too, you know, near Santa Cruz. And those kids have been studied for 19 years out of UC Berkeley. And those kids who are also heavily sprayed with organophosphates, which is not glyphosate, but glyphosate is a type of organophosphate, those kids have been shown to have some of the highest rates of ADHD. And my colleagues who work at UCSF with pediatricians have told me informally and anecdotally that when kids come in with severe ADHD, they say, yeah, they're probably from Salinas. That's how it's become. So I just want to wrap up by saying there's no doubt in the science that kids are tremendously affected by glyphosate and the genetic modification process. This is a no-brainer for me as a clinician to remove toxicants and toxins out of our children's environments. I believe that this is just, as Kathleen Halal said, it's just common sense. Thank you.
And now if I could introduce Jeffrey Smith, who is named as Person of the Year by Masters of Health magazine. He's the founder of the Institute for Responsible Technology. He's an author, a filmmaker. He had a laundromat before he did all this.
I did? I guess I did.
Anyway, most of us know Jeffrey Smith. Jeffrey.
I like to use the microphone. Thank you. We are seeing a pattern here in the glyphosate and GMO world that we've seen with lead, that we've seen with tobacco, that we continue to see over and over again. There's a certain game that gets played where they throw their experts, Bobby Kennedy calls them cyostitutes, and they throw rigged research and corrupt data, and they also have very heavy lobbying influence in places like this, in order to try and convince that there's no, that our science is wrong, and that their science is right, and that there is no problem. And so I have been fortunate enough to be traveling around the world on the GMO issue, which includes the glyphosate issue, and I have seen how Monsanto captures regulatory agencies and governments. I've been to 45 countries working in this area, and the activists will explain which person in government is the captured regulator or the captured minister or the ministry is taken over. And then I see in their rhetoric Monsanto's words. They captured the European Food Safety Authority, and they actually, EFSA, which is their version of the FDA, they literally cut and paste Monsanto's statements as their own. And maybe change a few words here and there. They've actually been charged with plagiarism. Not by Monsanto, by the public. So what I want to do is talk about how they're trying to defend against the World Health Organization's declaration that glyphosate is a Class 2A carcinogen, which they said it definitely causes cancer in animals, it definitely causes mutations in human DNA, and where it is sprayed, there's higher concentrations of cancer. So it's also declared a carcinogen by the California government. And in France, they wanted to ban it. They're going to ban it completely in a few years. So these are, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to move myself so I can actually read them. So I'm going to leave the microphone for a minute. So this is liver and bile duct cancer incidence. And it's related to, thank you, my esteemed assistant. Thank you, Michelle. So this is a correlation. And I have to say that whenever I show slides of correlation, we have to put it into context. The fact that the line that is blue or purple, which is the amount of glyphosate applied to genetically engineered soy and corn, the fact that it is related to the increase of this cancer does not mean that it causes it. It's correlation, it's not causation. However, when you're looking at from an epidemiological standpoint, and you have probable causation because you understand the mechanics that glyphosate causes problems in human DNA, oxidative stress, etc., and then you also see these epidemiological statistics, then that gives you a bigger picture. It gives you more data points from which to evaluate. So it is not irrelevant. It is just on its own not causation. But I think it's relevant because if glyphosate is a probable human carcinogen, we probably should see some type of correlation. And here we see a correlation between liver and bile duct cancer. And here we have kidney and renal pelvic cancer. And here we have kidney and bladder cancer incidence. And here we have thyroid cancer. And here we have deaths due to myeloid leukemia. And this is discharges of breast cancer. In Argentina, they went house by house in an area that was of a city that was closer to the soybean fields. And they found disease in nearly every house. They found a tremendous increase. The respondents said got better when they switched to non-GMO and largely organic diets. Yes. So in that paper, I looked not just at the carcinogenicity of glyphosate, but also the fact that it is a chelator, an antibiotic, it's linked to birth defects, that it's a mitochondrial toxin, and a number of other attributes of glyphosate, as well as the GMO disruption, as well as the Bt toxin. But let's take a look at some of the other correlational graphs, the correlations between glyphosate use on GMOs and other diseases. Again, we want to caution. These do not mean that glyphosate is the cause. But I want you to see that if it is a cause, and that we can look scientifically and say, yes, there's reasons why we can say that glyphosate is likely promoting that particular disease because it has this particular mode of action at the gut, at the microbiome level, at the cellular level, etc. If you look at this and realize if glyphosate was responsible for 50%, 25%, even 10% of the damage that you're going to see in these slides, you realize it needs to be banned. And children are most at risk, and so we propose that it's banned initially or in the schools, daycare centers, and also parks. So this is hospital discharge of inflammatory bowel disease. The red is the glyphosate. The bars are the discharge of inflammatory bowel disease. This is deaths due to intestinal infection. I'm just going to move through these quickly. Acute kidney failure, deaths. ADHD. Anxiety. Schizophrenia. Autism prevalence for 6-year-olds. This is, if a correlation were exact, if the R value would be 1. This is 0.9972. Diabetes. Stroke deaths. Deaths due to senile dementia. Deaths due to Alzheimer's. Deaths from Parkinson's disease. Deaths due to obesity. Deaths due to high blood pressure. Anemia. Dementia. Insomnia. Each one of these we could take time and analyze. Insomnia. Melatonin. People take melatonin at night to go to sleep. Serotonin, precursor to melatonin. Serotonin may be damaged because of the consumption of glyphosate. We can track these possible lines of causality. And we have enough information, not just in the animal feeding studies, but in the clinical experience of Dr. Perot and thousands of physicians and healthcare practitioners who are prescribing non-GMO diets. Their experience, the 3,256 people, the 150 lectures where I asked audience members what they got better from, we can see that there is a problem here. And we can track that glyphosate is probably a major contributor to that. And if you look at the animal feeding studies on animals exposed to glyphosate, you can see precursors or exacerbations of these same type of problems. We do not need to wait for more science to take reasonable steps. And the reasonable steps right now, it's too late to protect from the beginning this next generation. We need to rush like crazy to try and bring them back to a state of health. I've asked Dr. Perro and I've asked others, what's changed since the mid-90s when glyphosate started to increase 15-fold, when GMOs were introduced, etc., when the amount of glyphosate in our urine jumped by 13-fold since 1993. What's happened? And it's the same story every time, in children especially, and also in pets, and also in livestock. So what we propose, and we're going to take questions in a moment, what we propose is that we protect as much as possible from every different angle the next generation. And what the proposal is for today, in front of, laying before the feet of our leaders, of our political leaders who serve us. Let's protect the children from the spraying of glyphosate, where they're at school for hours a day, or at daycare centers, or where they roll on the ground and play sports in parks, and where the dogs roll around in the parks and get pet by the kids and their hands go in their mouth. Let's be reasonable. Let's protect the future generation so that we do not continue with this disaster. Thank you very much.
Dr. Carroll and Howard, would you please come up and join our panel? And at this time, we'll take questions. And if you have a specific question for a specific speaker, then please ask it by name. Marianne?
I'm just wondering if the hands of the medical establishment are completely tied, because why is it that we're not doing, when a child comes in with cancer, we're not looking at levels of glyphosate in the tumor, in the child's blood supply? I mean, as a causative agent, and just from a point of view of like helping the child to heal, I mean, wouldn't it be a good idea if we could say to parents, as you have found maybe, that if you change the diet, you can heal the child, even when a child has cancer? Wouldn't it be a good idea to put them on an organic diet? Why then are we just banning them with carcinogens before we know anything about costs? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think to understand, things change slowly in conventional medicine, for sure. And in medical schools, it's still a pharmaceutical approach. Medical students receive a year of pharmacology. Maybe now it's up to 2 weeks of nutrition. And integrative medicine is only being offered in a few medical schools as an elective, and not necessarily as a mandatory requirement. So, but it is starting, the dialogue is starting to change, whether for other healing modalities. You also, can you all hear me? You need me on the mic? Is my mic me up?
Yes.
Mic it up, okay. So the other thing to remember is that at the early part of the 1900s, when integrative medicine and holistic medicine was a huge part of the repertoire of clinicians, not just MDs, but of clinicians, such as chiropractic care, homeopathy, herbal, and other types of medicine, there was a huge push by Rockefeller and others with pharmaceutical companies to ban that type of treatment. It was called the Flexner Report. And so that type of treatment went underground. And we are still locked to a degree in that type of training, that type of treatment, that pharmaceutical-based treatment. I think we needed to find a place to put products left over from the oil industry. And that's, I think we're still living in part, that part of it. We also can't forget the huge effect and influence of big pharma on medical schools and medical education. And they have a huge influence as well. Also, holistic treatments are also very affordable and low cost compared to pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceutical industries don't often have a lot of incentive to get people off the medications or drugs because they make money for every pill you take. So the incentive to get people off drugs is often lower. So I think that plays into it. And so, but it's starting to change. It is starting to change. It's not happening fast enough because you heard of the epidemic that we're in, so it needs to happen a little bit faster. Sorry for a long answer, but that's where we're at.
Another question.
Yeah, I'm curious, just in general, if there's anyone in this room who's from either a staffer or a congressperson in the California legislature. That was the purpose of this, I thought.
There was one, but he left
Is there
early.
anybody here?
There was one, but he left early.
Do we know? Okay, so I'm just really sad.
What your audience was.
Yeah, because you guys are preaching to the choir here, and we need to be preaching to the legend. How do we make that happen?
But a comment that was made outside, and I should have said something earlier about this.
Mike.
Mike, please.
Thank you. Preaching to the choir. I have never listened to a speaker on this subject, whether it be Jeffrey, Dr. Pero, Dr. Huber, Dr. McNeil, how many others that I'm privileged to work with. I always go away with something.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm not saying we're not going away with anything. I'm just saying
you are all speakers. You're all presenters in whatever size way it becomes. Because that's how we've been continuing to win this battle and continuing to gain the momentum. It's one person at a time that we have to continue to spread the message.
Another question.
This is a legal question. Courts have taken a look at this issue, and Monsanto has been taken to court. In fact, there are a couple lawsuits that were filed about GMOs. And my question is, actually it's twofold. How has it been gone? In a book I'm reading now called, it's called Roundup, Making You Sicker Than You Think. They talked about a court case in here about how these farmers tried to sue to stop this, and then they turned around and sued them. And what is the possibilities that we could win in court? We could possibly win in court and stop this.
It's an interesting angle. If, as an activist, we look at all the different ways. Do you do research, legislation, litigation, education? Now, with litigation, it's a crapshoot. You don't really know. A friend of mine filed a class action against Monsanto, and the class action was turned down. And the New York Times later reported that that particular judge used to be a lawyer for Monsanto. He never made that public when he made his ruling, and he never recused himself. Clarence Thomas used to be a Monsanto attorney, and he wrote the majority opinion on a decision that favored Monsanto. So it's hard to say whether we can win or not. The advantage of the law is that it can affect huge change very quickly. Once it's decided, the disadvantage, it can take years, cost lots of money, and if you lose, you end up impoverished with no incremental gain. Right. So because there's class actions representing now in terms of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and there's now new information showing a very tight correlation with acute myeloid leukemia, not just correlation, but also causative pathways, and that could provide another avenue. So I think that there is a possibility that these major lawsuits will take a big toll out of the pocketbooks of these companies, but there's no way to tell in advance.
My follow-up question is, since it's caused all these health issues that you said with children, have parents gotten a hold of other parental organizations and said, education organizations, and come forth and said that these are hurting our children and our future generations?
Yeah, good question. And the answer is yes. There are moms groups that are forming. We have one in Marin County, Moms Advocating Sustainability. There is one from Kathleen Halal's neck of the woods, Moms Across America, that she was co-founder with a gal named Zen Honeycutt. So there are many groups that are forming. There are other moms groups that are in local counties and municipalities. Those are better, well-known groups. But some of these things, what we're doing, is what I have focused on is going mom hand-to-hand combat. And you say, hey, what about the dads? Men are involved too. And I don't mean that, but I have to tell you, in my practice, in my clinic, I didn't rarely see dads, almost never. Perhaps the way our society's set up, dads are working, moms are bringing the kids in, but it seems that moms were particularly concerned, and that's who I went after, because moms spend 85% of the household budgets. So, I heard Jeffrey talk about tipping points in the past, financial tipping points, and that's what we have focused on, that if we can get moms to create shopping and create these tipping points of what we're buying. I can tell you I spend all the money in my house, ask my husband. That if we change that, then we create a tipping point. So I think it's going to be, we're sitting here in the Capitol, but I really think it's going to be up to us. So regarding your question earlier, your question, yes, we need our legislators to give us the tools, but we can do the ground-to-ground work now, and I think we can do it. And that's why we're here.
And just to add to that, you know, I look at the faces today, and a lot of you are already guild members. If you're not a member of the California Guild, I'll put some business cards out on this table here. Please pick it up and join us, because we're all working together on this. Another question.
Doctor, I've been puzzled for a while. I've known about the PCRSA and its use in criminal law, and they could take a molecule and duplicate a billion copies in an afternoon. If your DNA is found on a crime scene, you go to jail. Okay. What the FDA said that wasn't supposed to exist after digestion is being found in our bodies. As far as using the assay for establishing nutrient content of foods before and after, is this something that we can pursue in a good way? I mean, I know that tests are designed in the industry to not find a problem, and that's the problem with the animal testing and that, but we're moving on to seeing we're kind of in a petri dish mode, but why is not the PCRSA used for our benefit now, for more?
Well, it's a good question. So those PCR tests and look at the microbiome is now being offered to individuals. There's the Human Genome Report, for example. There's something called UBiome, where you can get your stool tested and look at the microbiome. So it's just starting to hit the airwaves. It seems as though integrative practitioners, whether we're acupuncturists or clinicians or physicians, have been embracing some of the newer technology quicker, and conventional medicine is a little slower, but it is happening, and we're just starting to look at it, those PCRs. Those PCRs are interesting because they only show you what bacteria or organisms are present, not exactly if they're functional, alive, or what they're actually doing. But to remember is we use as clinicians lab tests as guides, not absolutes. What's most important are your clinical symptoms and what we're finding. And so with the lab tests as guides, we can use that to guide us in treatment. A lot of this microbiome stuff is new. And when I prescribe probiotics, half the time I don't really know what I'm doing. Yeah, you say, what? She's prescribed to know what she's doing. I don't know. I'm giving you 25 billion colonies of something, and I'm trying to rebalance your microbiome. And if you thought I had all the understanding whether that's going to work, I try it and I see. So sometimes we're not always sure, and this is really cutting-edge stuff. Okay. And it's happening and it's changing, but it's not yet cemented in, and I think it's going to happen.
Okay, but how about if you're looking at nutrient content, right? You can find out how much of a product is still there before and after.
Like looking at specific nutrients?
Yeah, it's looking at a specific metal that's found.
Yeah, you can measure those. Your physician can measure those nutrients in your body.
But as far as having a crop, and so you say, okay, this is organic, so we're looking to move forward and to really prove a point here. So are there studies that at our hand that we have that's showing the difference before and after in a way whether you eat conventional foods?
In people or in animals? Because in people there's some and not much, but in animals I think there's more literature. Howard?
Well, the thing I was going to address is because of the chelation effect of glyphosate, you can do an analysis on a crop or a feedstuff, forage, whatever the case may be, look at the nutrient density, and it will appear that the nutrition is there, but it's biounavailable if glyphosate is present. And it only takes, in the research on plants, where they looked at nutrient uptake, it took 1/40th of the label rate of glyphosate to chelate many of the micronutrients. So it's a very minuscule amount to make that bio unavailable. So it's there, but you can't use it.
But it would still show up as there, but you can't use it. So that's what you're saying.
They're working on a new methodology and testing to where they can hopefully be able to determine the availability of what's there, and that's directly because of the presence of glyphosate.
There's actually two things. One, the translocation of the minerals through the plant is reduced. It also kills the beneficial bacteria in the soil, which help turn the unassimilable minerals into something that the plant can assimilate. So there will be less minerals in the plant, and as Howard said, even if they're there, they may not be functioning. And what's interesting is one of Howard's good friends, Art, who's a veterinarian, he'll send organs, livers of dead animals, stillborn, and find no detectable manganese in an area that's plenty of manganese supposedly in the soil, but no detectable manganese in the animal because probably the chelation. So, and it's like when you pull the minerals out of the food supply, there are hundreds of disorders that are associated with that. And that's just one of the reasons why these diseases may be related.
And a follow-up to that, there's also studies that document that the genetically engineered crops are deficient in their capabilities of taking up certain micronutrients.
Another question. You had your hand up. Did you? Okay, other question? Jeff?
I just, before I make my awful comment, I'd like to commend all of you for the work you've done. I really have a lot of respect for it. It's really, I mean, to do this and get the static you guys get from whatever it is out there is really, it takes a lot of nerve, courage. But one question that I have, or I already think I know the answer to, is why is this happening? Is this some haphazard thing that glyphosate suddenly appeared? Is it some haphazard thing that Bayer Pharmaceutical had put out tainted blood products in their Factor 8, killing hemophiliacs for 10 years? I think what we're seeing here, and this is, and you can get on my case or people can throw rotten tomatoes at me, but there's a certain naivety to what I'm hearing here, and that is, and maybe there's legal repercussions, but we're seeing, in my mind, the implementation of a plan. It's not just, it's glyphosate, it's 2,4-D, it's the vaccines, it's the GMOs. This is an part and parcel of an anti-human program, and the doctor did mention or make reference to the Rockefeller Foundation. They are one of the foundations of this evil that we're witnessing, and so I you know, throw it back on me. But that's the question I get from people is like, gosh, this is terrible what you're saying, but why would anybody do this? And the first response is always just for a few bucks, and I think the bottom people are in it for bucks, but the people that are implementing this thing are evil. They know it.
Eugenics.
It's eugenics.
Google
It
eugenics.
started with the Galtons, the Wedgwoods, the Huxleys, and the Darwins in the 1850s. It
started with Plato.
Sure, but that's logically.
Let's have Jeffrey respond.
Yeah. Okay, I'm shutting up.
Okay, so you're not the first person that has made this theory, and I don't have any data to support one way or the other. That's all I got.
Okay.
So, all right, you want to call on someone?
Another question. Let's see, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I just kind of follow, your thought, but for the same thing, I'm very thankful to be around all you experts, and that you have been working so much in this area. But I have one question that only you, the experts, can answer me, probably, or guide me if I'm wrong. For me, personally, this is a human right violation. And we have been talking about, I hear many people talking about many things. But I feel, personally, as a cancer patient, that I am, that my human rights have been violated. And we've been working with the labeling, and all of that, and I wonder if any Because, you know, among attorneys, there are the different areas that they dwell.
So-
Why not the human right and animal rights? I mean, from that area.
I can give you two answers to the human right and the animal right. One is I was invited to Germany more than a decade ago by a group who wanted to push the human rights agenda as their way of fighting GMOs. I don't think it had any traction, but that was their angle. Another angle came out in the Ecuador constitution, where they gave nature rights, the rights of nature. And it was interesting that the president wrote in that in case of national security, they could allow GMOs. The Constitution said no GMOs, but it was up to the president in the case of national security. He was invited to the U.S. by Monsanto, given the full treatment, and then came back and said, I think I made a mistake by promoting the banning of GMOs, and we should make it more available. So Ecuador is in my sights.
Another question.
Actually, I remember mine. So just trying to counter the industry talk. Something I've heard recently that they're trying to use as an argument, and I know it's fishy, and I already started to do some research, but maybe you have more information, is on the Prop 65 list that Roundup's been placed on now. Our ag commissioner pointed out that aloe vera and golden seal are on the list, and he was using that as a reason to kind of poo-poo the whole thing. I started reading a little bit about it on the way over here, and I found out that they were both declared, put on the list the same year, the same day, the same year, based on 35 comments. And I know we've all done, things where there's been thousands of comments on things in the past, and they don't pay attention. So 35 comments. But I'm just wondering if you know more about that, so I can kind of debunk that whole thing. Have you heard that? And when you look, the whole list, it's all bad stuff. And then there's just those two things that seem kind of innocuous. And I know it's got to be shady, like probably the industry got it on there somehow.
I'm not sure I can answer exactly, if somebody has more information specifically about like why the golden seal was put on the list. If you take enough golden seal, maybe couple of 1,000 grams, you probably will get some liver damage. I think if you take 1,000 grams of, if you eat beef, you'll probably have some liver damage. So why that got on there, I imagine it was a ploy. But I can't say. Does anybody have the answer to that question?
Aloe vera was the other one.
Aloe vera.
I have an answer for the aloe vera. It's the whole aloe vera. I wondered the same thing. So when you have the whole aloe vera and there's the gel in between, there's an orange drip in between the outside of the leaf and the gel. So you need to drip that out. That's why that is on there. I wondered the same thing.
The orange,
the orange in between. Yeah, I don't know what it's called. I'm not a scientist. I just know it was on there and I looked it up.
To get on that list, there has to be like peer-reviewed, published research to show that it either causes cancer, reproductive harm. And I'm just wondering, we know how research can be rigged, and it seems like, maybe they only had to show one article and 35 people commented and it gets on the list. But that they're using that to say, well, these things are on the list, and so it doesn't mean anything that Roundup's on the list.
They say the same thing about coffee being on the probable carcinogen list.
Yes,
Well, there's signs all over the place.
I didn't see coffee on there.
We have another question.
Bob, can I
Howard?
follow
Yes.
up to that
Sure.
gentleman's? I can't answer your question, but I want to ask you some questions.
Sure.
Do you recognize any of the names in the center of the circle?
The most evil of the names in the center of the circle is not Monsanto. It's
do you
it's
recognize
the IG farm Bayer. I work at Bayer.
When you see AstraZeneca, Syngenta,
Yeah. They're.
what do you think of?
I know very little.
Have you ever seen a commercial on TV that says if you can't afford your medication cost, contact us?
I don't watch television.
That commercial sponsored by AstraZeneca?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of atrazine?
Absolutely.
One of the oldest herbicides on the market.
Right.
That product is made by AstraZeneca Syngenta.
Oh, that was
the
Syngenta?
#4 producer of genetically engineered crops in the world. When you see or hear bear, what's the first thing you think of?
Factor 8, because I was
You ever heard
there.
of Bear Crop Science, makers
Yeah.
of Aztec insecticide, Liberty herbicide, and genetically engineered crops? When you see Pfizer Pharmacy up, John, what's the first thing you think of? Did you know they were the sole parent company of Monsanto at one point in time?
Were they? Pfizer?
So we've established the fact that all the companies in the center of the circle are in the pharmaceutical and the chemical business. So we're going to start with chemical. Please give me one word that you would use to describe a chemical that's used to kill a weed or an insect, and you're describing that chemical to a 5-year-old child. What one word might you use?
Poison.
Okay, we're using poison to raise crops. What do we raise crops for?
Food.
Cereal and grain. What do we feed the bulk of the grain to? In the fact that we're using this poison to raise the crop, if there were to be a residual effect, do you think it'd be positive or negative?
Negative.
So if there's an adverse effect in using this poison on the crop that could affect the grain, you feed the grain to the livestock don't feel good, who might you call for help? When the veterinarian comes, what might he suggest you give your animals to make them feel better?
Antibiotics.
What if you want your animals to grow faster? What might you give them? What do we raise livestock for?
Well, I don't eat it, but
So who eats the meat? So if there's an adverse effect using this poison on the grain that might affect the livestock, is there a chance it could be in the meat, it might affect the people? If the people don't feel good, where do they go for help? After you go to your doctor, where might he send you with a piece of paper with his autograph on it? Does that present a positive cash flow for the companies in the center of the circle?
And that's the house that Jack built.
I know, it's like they all got together and say, hey, we know how to make you really rich.
Another question? And we are getting short on time now, folks.
I have a question about the fact that glyphosate chelates. So it not only chelates the minerals so the plants can take it up, of course it does that with us too. And so I'm wondering, is there a way of testing our blood or our urine to see if we're deficient in manganese and zinc and these minerals? So that would be one way of showing that it actually does have a deleterious effect in terms of treatment for that person as well as for a larger study, right?
Well, only if you knew that the food they ate was lacking those.
So regular lab tests, you don't need anything fancy, Quest, LabCorp, whatever, can run your manganese or your zinc levels. They do some, they don't do all of them. They can certainly check them, but the trick is they have to order red blood cell levels and not plasma levels, because plasma is almost uniformly, your blood will do, your body will do everything to keep plasma levels normal. So you have to look at the levels within red blood cells. And so what you do is, which is something I do, you check it. If it's low, then you make the corrections. You correct the gut. You heal the leaky gut. You rebalance the microbiome. You restore nutrient levels, and then you recheck it. And lo and behold, they restore. But people actually feel better, so you have clinical proof because you feel better. But you can then recheck it, and your levels will come up. Your manganese, your zinc, your chromium for your thyroid function. It's all linked. For all those different body functions, you need those minerals to run enzyme systems. They're called metalloenzymes. So for example, I think most of the population now is magnesium deficient. It's a profound issue right now. You can have your doctor run a red blood cell magnesium level. And you just can't throw magnesium. See, that's kind of green pharmacy, just throwing nutrients at yourself. You have to change your diet. And it's very hard to get people to change their diets. Yeah. Maybe you know that. So, but what people will do is change their diet for their children's diet. So, or their grandchildren for that matter. Be careful with that if you're a grandma or grandpa telling your daughter-in-law what to do. Be careful with that. But yes, and then you recheck and they get better.
Let's have one more question.
Can we get some studies published that show that?
Well, I don't know if we can get studies published. It would be great to have those studies. I don't have those studies, but integrative practitioners are doing it. But it's not so easy to do human studies, but that's not the hardest study to do, actually. It's not.
Everybody in this room could go and get their doctors to test their blood for the magnesium and zinc, and then we could give it to one of you on the panel, and then maybe you could use that in future publications.
Through Jeffrey's website, we can do the next
You
study.
gotta do a comparison. It's a little more,
Yeah.
sophisticated.
It's a little tricky. It's not, yeah.
We have one more question. Let's go back to the cameraman.
So I want to thank you all for your commitment and research. I've learned something new today. I was a little bit shocked to hear that some judges and politicians might get under the table payments or work for large companies. I'm shocked, but I'd like to say, and it kind of accentuates what you just said. I've actually been a vegetarian 36 years, and I raised my children completely organic. But when it comes to making change, it really starts within. So even though we're here in the Capitol building and we're trying to bring this to the awareness of legislators and make this more common knowledge and get out to the media, the reality, it starts with our own practice of what we're talking about today on our self-awareness. How many of us heard a few years ago when Taco Bell was serving cattle corn? I mean, I know a lot of people really enjoy fast food restaurants, but I've shied away for a long time. I haven't seen a doctor in over 35 years either. But the point being that it really starts with all of us, and it's hard. It makes time for preparation. It can be a little more expensive. But I want to encourage you all to eat organic and educate your neighborhood. Where I live up in Nevada County, there's big neighborhoods that have all gotten together and refused the spraying of Roundup because it gets into the water tables. And actually, some of the solutions they came up with is they hired teenage kids in the neighborhood for less money than the city was spending on spraying to come out twice a year with lawnmowers and just cut the weeds down and take care of it. So there's a lot of very people-orientated, community-based solutions that we can find. And of course, we have to continue the political pressure, but nonetheless, make the changes. Let's not wait. I think that's one of the things that's happening with our country. As much as I love being an American in our country and I've traveled the world, is that we can't wait for someone else to do it. People have to find a peaceful and community-based solution to make the decisions and the choices. And if you want to go to McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell or Kentucky Fried Chicken, you know what? Turn and go to Whole Foods, spend a few more dollars, and do the right thing, because it really does affect your quality of life.
Thank you very much.
Bob,
I just want to remind all of you, what this is all about today is trying to change, trying to bring good change for the better. And one of the ways you can do that, again, is to work with us. One of the things we discovered today, talking with legislators, is that it's going to take a coalition. And it's going to take boots on the ground. It's going to take people like you. So please, if you're not in our organization already, this is how we can put you in touch with all of us. So I'm going to leave these cards here.
I want to add one thing, Bob, before we
Very quickly, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeffrey, I didn't know.
I got the hook from the man. Okay. I do think if Howard or Michelle want to also add what to do, I think it's a good point to end on what we can do. We have a little landing page called Non-GMOs Improve Health. And on there you can see the results of that study that I showed with the 3,000 people. There's an interview with me and Michelle about her clinical experience. You can enter information to get a free PDF of my last book, Genetic Roulette, and a video update. So I would suggest that there was a question about we're just preaching to the choir. I like to use the word arming the choir. And it's like that's a web page, Non-GMOs Improve Health, that you can share with everyone, and it's got a easy-to-read summary of the article on the left side, the detailed 21-page article on the right side, in terms of a click. And that's one thing that I'd like to recommend, is that we all use this opportunity to decide what we can do. And before I turn it over to Michelle, who I'm going to suggest, plug your book, I'm going to also suggest that our attitude be one of switching from victim to victor. And it's like, some people like to thrive on the fight, but we don't even have to feel like, sure, they're trying to hurt us or whatever, make a buck, but we can completely drop the fight piece too and say, yeah, this is our world. This is what we've inherited. This is what we're going to pass on. And so just choose to bless the world and your life with what you know to be true. Bless your friends with that information, and become a victor. That's my message.
Can you repeat the site?
The site is Non-GMOs Improve Health.
Thank you, sir.
I'm blessed with serendipity because my neighbor, Dr. Vincent Adams, and I were hiking, and she agreed 4 years ago to write this book together because I was unable to put my tushy in a chair after working in a clinic all day. And without Vincent, Dr. Adams, incredible skill, curiosity skill. She was a major skeptic initially, and now she is totally on board. But her incredible attention to detail, I'm a kind of a big picture gal, but she honed me in on details that we were able to produce that book. And we are very proud of that book, and it really is, I think, one of a kind to have the scope of a clinician and the broader picture of a medical anthropologist together who understand the big picture. So that marriage is a beautiful gift. So thank you, Vincent.
Thank you.
What's the name of the book?
It's What's Making Our Children Sick, and we really did a great look into the expose of looking at my patients, but in a way that's both narrow and very broad. And we looked at the bigger food, the politics of food, in a big way. And there's the book, What's Making Our Children Sick,
What is it?
by Chelsea Green.
Oh.
So,
But you should look at what's making
we're hopeful that we can get it to every parent, every consumer, every eater out there. That's for eaters. And again, as Jeffrey said, we're doing this in a non-contentious, non-fighting way. This is just sharing information. If I can say one thing to families, it would be I have 3 things that I tell parents when they leave the office is eat organic, drink filtered water, and take your shoes off at the door. And if people can do those 3 things, dust is the most toxic thing you bring into your house, although my husband won't take his freaking shoes off. Other than that, if your families can do those 3 things, there it definitely is for better health. And that's just simply what I tell my families.
There is any chance that your book will be translated to Spanish?
I love that question, and we are talking to our editors to get it translated into Spanish. It's going into Polish. That's the first country. Woo-hoo! Go Poland. But yes, Spanish would be great. We have some connections in Buenos Aires, and we'd love to go down there for a little road trip.
I am from Buenos Aires.
North Korea?
I am from Buenos Aires.
You're from Buenos Aires? We're trying to get there. Because there's so many problems, as you saw in Argentina.
Maybe you can translate.
So yeah, we're trying to get there.
Just one comment on 2 things. The Genetic Roulette DVD, it's in the library, Sacramento Library for everybody. But if you could try to get your book into the library system, because a lot of people will look it up and read it in the library system.
And that would be fine. That's on our to-do list.
Could I address that question?
You have to wrap it up.
You can go to your public library, give them the ESPN number, and tell them to order it, because that's what a library is supposed to do.
Good.
They'll
You
do
don't
it.
have to wait for somebody else to do it.
Yeah,
You can do it
everybody should
yourself.
do that for their public library.
Yep,
That's important.
that's right.
Call.
Central Library is
Call.
Tip of the day.
Name's Rothschild.
I'll just say 2 things. Number 1, buy the book. You won't be sorry. I gave it to my daughters, my daughter-in-law, my mother-in-law, all for Christmas.
All right.
And I noticed something today out in front of the Capitol building at the rally. And the good Lord has blessed me in ways I can't begin to count or imagine or appreciate enough. But you remember when different speakers were asking about health? I could keep my hand down. I have 3 of the most beautiful, healthy grandchildren in our community.
Where do they live?
On the same farm I live on.
Do they eat organic?
Friends of my son and daughter-in-law have children with leukemia, had kidneys removed, are on medication. We have beef, pork, chicken, turkey, lamb, milk, and eggs on our farm. People that get that stuff, we've got a preschool teacher. 60% of the children she has in TK are on medication. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, people look at Michelle's book and, oh, well, they're just not like that around here. Open your eyes, people. Look what's going on around you. So.
Yay. Order the meat from Howard.
Another round of applause for our panel, please. This is largely
Am I live?
I'm Katie Davis. I am the baker and owner of New Dawn Bakery, located in Auburn, California. We started New Dawn Bakery baking out of our home kitchen and selling at the Nevada City Farmers Market. Within the first year, we realized it was so popular that we needed a commercial space with a larger oven. And so we moved down to Auburn, and we now have a storefront and a commercial bakery. We are a dedicated gluten-free bakery with vegan, paleo, and dairy-free options. We are now open to the public 5 days a week. Come, bring your family, enjoy a goodie and a fresh cup of coffee.